An additional round of questioning may be called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Weingarten, you laid out in your testimony, your written testimony, that CISA, and that's the reason I think this subcommittee, as the Oversight Committee, needs to look at this also. It's an issue of supreme importance. That CISA had a central role in creating this, what I refer to as the censorship laundering enterprise. You mentioned they convene meetings, with social media companies and others and other law enforcement agencies. They switchboarded, meaning that requests to censor would come in from other sources, they'd pass them on. They would brief state officials on sort of what's acceptable thought and not, coordinate with public and private sector partners to, quote, build resilience. And maybe you get a chance to ask Dr. Miller-Idris about that topic. And I wonder if you'd elaborate on this one aspect, this coordination with private sector partners. Professor Turley made reference to it. In the article you made reference to, the Siegel Tablet Mag article, it refers to it as the NGO Borg. That is to say, all these acronymed entities. Talk about that, if you would, a little bit.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, briefly, switchboarding, that concept of receiving purported misinformation or disinformation and then passing it on to a platform and the platform responding and saying escalated and yes, under XYZ policy, we have actioned. We have taken action on this tweet. It seems to me that CISA understood that when it ran up against domestic speech, even though it appears domestic speech was captured in its switchboarding efforts, it recognized that the proper way to do this, in the term that this hearing is used of laundering it, could be better done through outsourcing those efforts, but in close coordination with the government. And so you mentioned before EIP, the Election Integrity Partnership. This is a consortium of 4 outside non-governmental groups, includes the Stanford Internet Observatory, University of Washington's CIP, the Atlantic Council's DFR lab, as well as a company called Graphica. Many of these organizations have links and ties to government officials. And essentially what CISA did in conjunction with EIP, and according to EIP officials, with some interns who were both working at CISA while at the same time members of SIO, the Stanford Internet Observatory, was create a platform to pass along purported dis, and malinformation, for this platform to, as shown in that graphic before, collect and surveil tweets, to then, for this platform, to pressure social media companies to change their terms of service, and then flag for them specific instances of content they believed ran up against those flags. And consequently, it led to, as shown, 22 million tweets and retweets and such to be labeled misinformation.
That phenomenon appears to be, it sort of goes underground, the government censoring effort, and there are a lot of other indications that it's kind of the cracks are being covered. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk about that some more. Dr. Koldorf, you're an epidemiologist of 30 years experience, 2 decades at Harvard. You are, to me, the epitome of a public health expert. And you made some views, expressed some views on COVID issues, and then you were censored. And CISA may have played a role in that. CISA, one of the connections is this election integrity project, or whatever it's called, partnership, became the Virality Project, which then censored COVID information. So not only were you censored by YouTube and Twitter and the like, there was a government hand in this kind of censorship. Thank you for your role in the Attorney Generals of Louisiana and Missouri's litigation. That is, frankly, to be thanked for the exposure of a lot of it. How does that make you feel that the government was responsible for censoring your views?
I think it's stunning. And if you had mentioned this 3 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you that scientists would be censored in this country.
Dr. Miller-Idris, you have said one thing I appreciated in your testimony. You said that we should protect people's First Amendment rights as you go about this. How do you propose to do that?
Sorry. Thank you for the question. I would say by not telling them what to think, by not censoring them, by not telling people what they should be thinking, but just helping them make better choices about recognizing some of the tricky content that, for example, their kids encounter online.
Well, but there's a recognition, the Supreme Court's recognized that there's a First Amendment right of access to information as well as the right to speak.
Yeah.
if, you know, one of your proposals in your policy recommendation list is that you continue to work with the tech sector to remove harmful and dangerous content. If it's content that the First Amendment allows,
Yeah.
how could you possibly justify removing it as a government agency?
Well, I would say as a government employee or agency or anyone would want to remove criminal content, content that is incitement to violence, criminal content, something that is inciting someone, that is live streaming the murder of people in a Walmart, for example. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about harmful content.
And my 5 minutes have expired, unfortunately. I hope we'll have a second round. Now